Li Yue adjusted the strap of her backpack as she stepped through the gates of the high school, the autumn leaves crunching beneath her shoes. The school loomed before her, its brick walls weathered by time, the windows reflecting the overcast sky like dull, unblinking eyes. Whispers followed her as she walked down the hall, students eyeing her with a mix of curiosity and wariness. She was the new transfer student, an outsider in a place where everyone else had already carved out their roles. At lunch she sat alone, picking at her food until a boy named Zhang Wei slid into the seat across from her. He was friendly, eager to fill her in on the school's gossip. "You hear about the rooftop?" he asked, lowering his voice. Li Yue shook her head, and Zhang Wei leaned in. "Years ago, a senior girl jumped. They say she was wearing a red dress, some kind of bad luck symbol. People claim they've seen her up there, just standing at the edge, waiting." He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Wes, she's lonely." Li Yue frowned, glancing toward the ceiling as if she could see through it to the rooftop above. The bell rang, cutting the conversation short, but the story stuck with her. That afternoon as she packed up her things, she overheard two girls whispering. "Did you hear? Someone saw her again last night. Just standing there staring down." One of them shuddered. "They say if she looks at you, you're next." Li Yue rolled her eyes, dismissing it as superstition. But as she left the classroom, a cold draft brushed against her neck, and for a moment, she thought she caught a flash of red in the corner of her vision. When she turned, the hallway was empty. The school felt heavier suddenly, the air thick with something unseen. She quickened her pace, the rumors echoing in her mind. By the time she reached the front gates, the sun had dipped behind the clouds, casting long shadows across the courtyard. She looked back at the school one last time, and there, on the rooftop, a figure in red stood motionless, watching her. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. Li Yue's breath hitched. Maybe the stories weren't just stories after all. Li Yue adjusted the collar of her uniform as she and Zhang Wei trudged up the stairs to the school library. The clock had long since struck 9, and the halls were eerily empty. They'd stayed late to cram for an exam, the flickering fluorescent lights casting elongated shadows on the scuffed linoleum. The library, usually bustling during the day, was now silent except for the occasional creak of aging furniture. As they settled at a corner table, Zhang Wei cracked open a textbook while Li Yue rubbed her temples. Outside the window the moon hung heavy in the sky, casting a pale glow over the school grounds. Then movement. A flash of red. Li Yue's head snapped up. There on the rooftop of the adjacent building, stood a figure in a flowing red dress. Its back was turned, long black hair swaying in the wind. "Did you see that?" Li Yue whispered, nudging Zhang Wei. He glanced up, squinting. "See what?" She pointed, but the figure was gone. There was someone on the roof, wearing red. Zhang Wei chuckled nervously. Probably just a trick of the light, or some senior pulling a prank. Li Yue frowned. The air had grown colder, a subtle but unmistakable chill crawling up her spine. She could have sworn the figure had turned its head slightly. Just enough for her to see the hollows where its eyes should have been. She shivered. They tried to refocus on their studies, but the image lingered in her mind. Later as they packed up, Zhang Wei hesitated. "You know, there is that rumor," he said, voice low. "What rumor?" "About the senior who jumped. They say she wore a red dress the day she..." He trailed off, eyes darting to the window. Li Yue swallowed hard. The rooftop was empty now, but the unease settled deep in her bones. Something had been watching them, and it would be back. Li Yue had always been drawn to the quiet corners of the school library, where the scent of aged paper and dust clung to the air. It was there, tucked between two forgotten volumes on the bottom shelf, that she found the diary. The leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed with time, but the handwriting inside was eerily precise. The entry spoke of a girl named Mei Lin, a senior who had once worn a red dress like a second skin, her words dripping with loneliness and despair. The final entry was dated the night she jumped from the rooftop, her final words a plea for someone to remember her. Li Yue's hands trembled as she read, her pulse quickening. This was proof that the rumors were real. She hurriedly snapped photos of the pages, her mind racing with the need to show Zhang Wei. But when she turned to leave, the diary slipped from her grasp and clattered to the floor. By the time she bent to pick it up, it was gone. The space between the shelves was empty, as if the book had never existed. Panicked, she scoured the library, her breath coming in short gasps. The librarian, an elderly woman with a perpetual frown, claimed no such book had ever been in their collection. Even the photos on her phone were corrupted, the text blurred beyond recognition. Had she imagined it? The weight of doubt settled over her like a shroud. That night, lying in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mei Lin's words had been meant for her. And that the ghost was far from finished. The school had long emptied, the last stragglers heading home as dusk settled over the campus. Li Yue and Zhang Wei remained, poring over textbooks in the dim glow of the library's overhead lights. The quiet was thick, broken only by the occasional rustle of pages. Then the whispering began. At first it was barely audible, a faint murmur drifting through the halls like a stray breeze. Li Yue lifted her head, frowning. "Did you hear that?" Zhang Wei shrugged, dismissive. "Probably just the wind." But the whispers grew louder, twisting into a chant in a language neither of them recognized. The words slithered, guttural and ancient, sending a shiver down Li Yue's spine. Curiosity, or something darker, pulled them from their seats. The hallways were empty, yet the whispers coiled around them, guiding their steps toward the stairwell. The air grew colder with each step, their breaths puffing invisible clouds. Zhang Wei hesitated, but Li Yue pressed on, her pulse hammering in her ears. The rooftop door stood slightly ajar, though it should have been locked. An unnatural chill poured through the gap, and the chanting swelled into a chorus, as if a crowd waited just beyond. Li Yue pushed the door open. The rooftop was empty, yet the chanting didn't stop. It seemed to rise from the very ground beneath them, the words clawing at their minds. Then, the temperature plummeted, their skin prickling with goosebumps. Zhang Wei grabbed Li Yue's arm, his grip tight with fear. "We shouldn't be here," he whispered. A shadow flickered at the edge of their vision, a flash of red, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. The chanting ceased abruptly, leaving a silence so heavy it pressed against their chests. The air warmed again, but the dread lingered. As they fled downstairs, neither spoke of what they'd heard. But the whispers had spoken to something deeper in Li Yue, a pull she couldn't explain. And high above, unseen, the red-dressed figure watched, her lips curled in quiet satisfaction. The school bell had just rung, signaling the end of another monotonous day. But Li Yue's unease hadn't faded since the incident on the rooftop. As she approached her locker, the metallic scent of copper hit her before she even saw it. Her stomach dropped. Streaked across the dull grey door were the words "Join me," scrawled in a thick, dark red substance that glistened under the flickering fluorescent lights. Her breath caught in her throat. Blood? No, it couldn't be. Yet the smell was unmistakable. Her hands trembled as she reached out, fingertips hovering just above the words. A cold draft slithered down the empty hallway, raising the hairs on her arms. Then she saw her. At the far end of the corridor, a figure stood motionless, bathed in the dim glow of the emergency exit sign. The red dress was unmistakable, the same one from the rooftop, the same one from the rumors. The fabric swayed slightly, as if stirred by an unseen wind, though the air was stiflingly still. Slowly, the figure raised a skeletal hand, fingers curled in a silent summons. The nails were blackened, the skin stretched taut over bone, resembling something long dead. Li Yue's heartbeat pounded in her ears, drowning out all other sound. The hallway seemed to stretch impossibly long, the walls narrowing in around her. She wanted to run, but her legs refused to obey. The figure's lips twisted into a smile, too wide, too many teeth. And then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. The words on the locker, however, remained, a warning, an invitation. Li Yue's hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms. She needed to find Zhang Wei. But as she turned to leave, a whisper brushed against her ear, so close it could have come from inside her own skull. "You can't escape." The wind howled across the rooftop, its icy fingers clawing at Li Yue's skin as she clutched Zhang Wei's arm. The red-dressed senior stood motionless at the edge, her back turned to them. The moonlight cast long, twisted shadows, making the scene feel like a nightmare. Zhang Wei swallowed hard, his breath visible in the unnatural cold. "We shouldn't be here," he whispered, but Li Yue stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this?" The figure slowly turned, and the air thickened with the stench of decay. The once elegant red dress was now tattered, clinging to a body that was little more than rotted flesh and exposed bone. Her hollow eyes locked onto Li Yue, and when she spoke, her voice was a chorus of whispers, as if countless lost souls echoed through her. "Loneliness is eternal," she hissed. "I waited so long for company." Zhang Wei yanked Li Yue back as the ghost lurched toward them, her skeletal fingers outstretched. The rooftop trembled, cracks splitting the concrete beneath their feet. Li Yue stumbled, her heart pounding as the ghost's laughter filled the air, a sound like breaking glass. "Join me," the spectre crooned, her jaw unhinging grotesquely. "You'll never be alone again." Li Yue's hands fumbled for the rusted metal pipe lying nearby. With a desperate cry, she swung it at the ghost, who shrieked as the pipe passed through her, scattering wisps of shadow. The distraction gave Zhang Wei just enough time to pull Li Yue toward the stairwell. As they fled, the ghost's wail followed them, a promise in the dark, "I'll find you again." The door slammed shut behind them, but neither dared to look back. The red-dressed senior was still there, waiting, always waiting, for the next soul to join her. Li Yue staggered away from the rooftop, her breath ragged and her clothes clinging to her sweat-drenched skin. Zhang Wei, pale and trembling, clung to her arm as they fled the school, the ghostly wails of the red-dressed senior still echoing in their ears. That night, Li Yue barely slept, her mind replaying the grotesque sight of the spectre. Her hollow eyes, her skeletal fingers, the tattered remains of that cursed red dress. By morning, she convinced herself it was over. The school seemed normal, the halls bright and silent. But then, as she walked to class, she saw it, a new face in the crowd. A shy, nervous girl stood at the front of the classroom, introduced as the latest transfer student. Li Yue's blood ran cold. From the corner of her eye, she spotted movement on the rooftop. The red-dressed senior stood there, her tattered sleeves fluttering in the wind, her lips stretched into a slow, knowing smile as she locked eyes with Li Yue, as if to say, "You escaped, but another will take your place." The whispers began again, drifting through the halls like a creeping mist. "Join me, join me." The new student glanced up, her face paling as if sensing the unseen presence. Li Yue wanted to warn her, to stop the cycle, but the words died in her throat. By then it was already too late. The next night, the new transfer student was seen entering the school alone after dark. No one tried to stop her. No one ever did. The red-dressed senior waited, her hunger growing. The cycle would continue over and over until one day someone would finally say yes. And when they did, she would drag them into the dark, where they would become just another ghost in her story. The rooftop door creaked open, the chanting began. The red dress shimmered under the moonlight, and above it all laughter, soft, sweet, and utterly merciless.